Welcome, guys. Welcome to this session of Market Wrap with Mr. Pankaj Pandey, our research head at ICICI Direct. We are doing this after a gap of 2 weeks. Pankaj sir, welcome back. We missed you for 2 weeks. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Gaurav.
कहाँ चले गए थे आप?
So I was out for Diwali vacations.
Okay, so let's dive into markets first. So let's start with Nifty. So what is your take for Nifty going ahead after festival season and into election zone जहाँ पे results next week से आने शुरू हो जाएंगे?
So overall, Gaurav, Nifty did not do much last week, hardly up about 0.4%. Mid caps, small caps were largely flat. But I think the overall global setup looks quite good because when you see US yields, so they're down about 50 odd bips across tenures. Crude oil surprisingly has come down sharply, so that's a very good thing. Then I think we have seen decent amount of price and time correction in the Nifty, especially time correction. So our sense is the previous high of 20,222, I think should get taken out if we don't see any negative surprises coming from the election side and weekly expiry we have. So overall, our sense is that the setup globally and domestically looks positive. And 19,850 अगर निकलता है तो then we would want to believe that new high is on the cards. And I think within sectors, IT could benefit from the overall improvement what we see in US setup. And then PSU and pharma continues to sort of do well. So that way, I think these are some of the sectors which should do well.
So you're saying 19850 के ऊपर we are all set to test new high. तो नीचे support नीचे की तरफ कोई support from your end for people who would still want that?
So support at the lower end would be at 19,400 levels.
Okay, so 19,400 support से we can see new high if 19,008. I think 875 जो 2 बार टेस्ट हुआ है पिछले 2 हफ्तों में उसके ऊपर we'll see new high definitely. पंकज सर, जो न्यू चीज है मतलब अभी हमने रिजल्ट सीजन खत्म किया है. सो सारे कंपनीज के रिजल्ट्स आ चुके हैं, इंडिया आईएनसी के सारे रिजल्ट्स. सो व्हाट इज योर टेक ऑन द रिजल्ट्स दैट हैज बीन रिलीज्ड बाय द कंपनीज इन Q2?
So I will come into parts. So for example, when you look at Nifty ke numbers, the overall bottom line growth was quite good at 33 odd percent. And quarter on quarter, though it is sort of flat, but I think largely one needs to sort of look at because last year जो आपका दिवाली था वो अक्टूबर में था तो उसके लिए आपका जो भी इन्वेंट्री बिल्डअप होता है एक महीने पहले चालू होता है. इस बार दिवाली नवंबर में था. And that also explains for a low single digit kind of a top line growth. Obviously, इसमें component ये भी है कि आपके जो last year to now some of the commodities are also at a lower price. So that is also sort of leading to lower top line growth. But margins have come out very strong at 19%. So आपके gross margins में करीब 540 bips का expansion था. आपके EBITDA margins at 19% है. Last quarter में भी 19% है. You are already sort of sitting at very high margins. And our sense is even for second half, overall things are looking quite good because I think some of the pockets like which did exceptionally well was autos and capital goods. जहाँ पे करीब 20% के ऊपर का top line growth देखा गया था. IT overall muted था because I think in general अगर आप most of your if you look at the guidance for most of the companies, the overall order wins have been good, but the execution of that is going to sort of take some time. So IT was a sort of a disappointment. And I think so from that perspective, overall earnings have been pretty robust, which is what we have seen in terms of numbers for Nifty. Now, when you sort of look at a broader universe, which is your mid caps and small caps, I think there also we have seen good amount of growth. So for example, when you look at say mid cap growth, the overall profit growth was 65%. The profit growth for small cap was about 27 odd percent. But small cap, I would want to sort of highlight is that this is the only segment or pocket where we have seen a sequential growth. So while Q1 was good for mid caps and small caps, and which is why quarter on quarter we haven't seen a growth. But small cap continues to sort of do well in terms of a relatively better top line growth and even more better sequential growth in the bottom line front. So broader market jo chal rahe hain, I think numbers are actually sort of supporting that. Largely, our sense is that we are going to maintain that Nifty EPS of 1080. And somewhere down the line, we will introduce about FY26 numbers also going forward. But I think our overall target still remains at 21,500 once we introduce FY26 numbers, which we'll do in a quarter's time. I think these numbers will get revised upwards, but I think numbers have been quite superlative. So growth momentum is definitely accelerating.
इसका मतलब all is well, we can expect the rally to continue and the party in small caps is yet to stay. अभी तक ऐसा कुछ दिख रहा नहीं है कि we may go down. एक जगह पार्टी खराब हुई थी, वो आरबीआई ने किया था. आरबीआई came out with a circular recently where risk weighted on unsecured side went up, like for credit cards and unsecured section. So what is your take on that? Because after that news, Bank Nifty started underperforming. So what is your take on that?
So yes, I think one needs to see the RBI commentary of late. So they've been very cautious, telling banks to sort of turn cautious on unsecured lending. But I think unsecured lending used to sort of continue at a robust pace. So 25% risk weightage increase for unsecured retail loans was not a big surprise from an overall perspective, because RBI has been telling banks to sort of go slow or curb that faster growth what we are seeing in unsecured loans. But I think the surprise element was the risk weightage which they have increased for banks lending to NBFCs. And that is where I think was a sort of an unexpected surprise for us, because one, I think for any NBFC, 25 to 30% off their loans or bank or their borrowings is from the banks. So that carries a higher weightage, and it has two implications. One, I think overall, because of this increase in the risk weightage, obviously the capital adequacy ratio of banks will come down by 20 to 80 odd bips. But that's not a material change, because banks are already sitting on good amount of liquidity. Even from a margin perspective, banks के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा दिक्कत नहीं है, because जैसे SBI ने हाईलाइट किया कि जो उनका इम्पैक्ट होगा 3 से 4 बिप्स का होगा, तो बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं होगा. But I think the challenge is going to be more on the NBFC side, because they'll have to sort of borrow outside bank, and that will increase their cost of capital, and also the growth rate in that particular segment will come down. But इसमें आरबीआई ने एचएफसीज और या प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लोन्स को एक्सक्लूड किया, तो एचएफसीज को कोई खास फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. एंड आई थिंक देयर आर सम पॉकेट्स जहां पे इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा रहेगा. सो फॉर एग्जांपल बजाज फाइनेंस विद इन द एनबीएफसीज इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू विटनेस मॉडरेशन बोथ इन एनआईएम्स and also in their business growth. I think what is impacted the most is probably SBI cards, because card business में अकेली listed company है. पूरा का पूरा इनका portfolio is unsecured, so they are going to see the maximum impact. And उसका कुछ impact हमने SBI में भी देखा है.
Right. I think even RBL Bank will have an impact, because major exposure comes there. And banks, like larger side banks में the major issue would be on CET1 ratio. उनका जो CET1 capital है वहाँ पे impact आ सकता है. And banks are not heavily exposed to these lower ticket size loans. So 3 to 4% जो आपने कहा, that's perfectly fine. So everything one should be okay, should not panic in terms of larger banks. NBFC somewhere is an issue.
But I think if one needs to see a broader perspective, I think good times may ideally you should turn more cautious rather than sort of going reckless. So I think it's a sort of a very calculated move from RBI. So I don't see this being structurally negative. In fact, this is structurally positive, because you are preventing the banks or NBFCs to sort of go or you're tempering that expectation. So that way, I think you are creating lesser volatility and more stability into the system.
Absolutely. And one more thing I can highlight here is that this was the same risk-weighted measure in 2019. So we have not done anything dramatically changed. We have just gone back to the 2019 measure, which was taken by RBI anyway. So perfect. So there's no need to panic in banks. So people who are listening, who are holding bank stock and were panicking, you need to just relax right now. Moving on.
One more thing I would want to probably highlight is that while the global yields have come down and everything, but we are not seeing meaningful inflows from a FI perspective.
Right.
And typically banks garner the maximum FI allocation. So our sense is that whenever this inflow resumes, probably towards the end of December month, when the portfolio shuffling or reallocation happens, I think that is when probably Bank Nifty might sort of start to do well or might outperform Nifty. So till that time, probably it's Nifty which is going to do well, and probably Bank Nifty is going to take a backseat.
Okay, so that's the case here. Moving on, there have been good news for defense sectors. I think new orders and everything is in place. So I think I would want to hear it from you if you would have come through this news. And defense has been your favorite sector, HAL, BDL, PEL, whatever I name is already suggested by your end. So sir, put some light here.
So defense is one sector which is sort of which continues to hog limelight. तो ऐसा कभी महीना नहीं जाता है जहाँ पे defense limelight में होता नहीं है. I think the latest news is probably that government is going to accept 1.4 lakh crores of worth of projects. So acceptance of necessity मिलने वाला है. So it is largely a first step towards accepting that we need to order some of these. इसमें तीन चीजें हैं. एक तो ये कि ओवरऑल नया एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर का बात हो रहा है विच इज गोइंग टू कॉस्ट अस 40,000 odd crores. Then 97 Tejas Mark 1 एक बात हो रहा है जिसका कॉस्ट is about 55,000 odd crores. And about 156 Prachand helicopters का बात हो रहा है जिसका costing is about 45,000 odd crores. So total value is about 1.4 crores. इसमें जो प्राइमरी बेनिफिशरीज होंगे गौरव, उसमें HAL होगा ऑब्वियसली, बिकॉज आपका तेजस मार्क 1A प्लस हेलीकॉप्टर का डिलीवरी या मैन्युफैक्चरिंग वही करने वाले हैं. आई थिंक एक कंसर्न पहले मार्केट में था कि मार्क 1A शायद डिले होगा, बट आई थिंक ओवरऑल टाइमलाइन के हिसाब से लगता नहीं है कि कुछ खास डिले होने वाला है. सो HAL इज ऑब्वियसली द प्राइम बेनिफिशियरी. एंड दूसरा जो प्राइम बेनिफिशियरी होगा वो कोचिन शिपयार्ड होगा, बिकॉज लास्ट एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर वाज मैन्युफैक्चर्ड बाय देम. And I think good part also is that because of indigenization level being higher, we would expect the execution cycle to be shorter this time for most of these projects. Now, when I look at the secondary beneficiaries, obviously Bharat Electronics hoga, because right from electronic warfare system, communication system se leke Uttam AESA radar is going to be supplied by them. Then obviously it offers an opportunity for companies like Data Patterns. Astra Microwave is also supplying electronic subsystems along with AESA radar. Then Bidhani, obviously, because you would need alloys for manufacturing engines, so that is one. And ऐसा होगा नहीं कि आप, if you're manufacturing defense systems, it will not take missiles. So you will have Astra air-to-air missiles and other missiles, which is used in helicopters. So Bharat Dynamics is another beneficiary of this. So I think it benefits the entire ecosystem, and with primary beneficiary being HAL and Cochin Shipyard.
Absolutely. I think Astra भी आपने cover किया है. हमारे hidden gem.
So largely we have covered all the stocks, and I think good part is that the macros continue to remain very strong.
Yes.
We're seeing good amount of defense spending and with higher indigenization levels. So all these companies are sort of doing well, expected to keep on doing well.
Absolutely. And I think BDL is one of our Murat picks as well. So people who are watching, do keep an eye here, because this Murat pick was, I think, kept in mind, taking all these news into account as well. Moving on, Pankaj, today we saw HPCL doing well, and आपने starting में भी कहा कि crude softening हुआ है. So what is your take on the OMC side? Let's talk about crude in detail and its impact on the OMC side.
So पहला चीज तो गौरव, when you sort of look at peak से crude करीब 20% down है. Crude continues to remain soft अगर आप पिछले कुछ week में देखें. And I think there are broadly 2-3 reasons for it. One, I think OPEC has postponed their meeting. So obviously there not much of an agreement in terms of what kind of supply cuts. So we don't expect कि आपका aggressive और supply cut होगा. दूसरा है कि जो आपका इजराइल का वॉर है वो ओवरऑल एस्केलेट होता हुआ नहीं लग रहा है. सो दैट इज अनदर थिंग. I think Chinese economy continues to remain soft. Previously, their refineries are taking lesser amount of crude for refining, so that is another. And crude oil inventory in US is quite high. So all this is sort of contributing to lower crude oil prices. Now, when we look at beneficiaries, so obviously beneficiaries में अगर आप देखेंगे तो oil marketing companies will benefit a lot. See, up till now, last quarter, if you look at, most of the companies have done well, largely because the refining margins have been good. But marketing side, they were getting impacted. But now our sense is that they'll start making some 3 to 4 rupees per liter on petrol and diesel, because इनका जो break even है करीब $85 पे होता है. ना इसमें सबसे बड़ा जो बेनिफिशियरी होगा एचपीसीएल होगा, बिकॉज एचपीसीएल का जो ओवरऑल रेवेन्यू में है वो सबसे ज्यादा मार्केटिंग मार्जिन से आता है, एंड सो कॉन्सिक्वेंटली अगर क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस सॉफ्टन होते हैं एंड और सॉफ्टन रहते हैं तो सबसे बड़ा बेनिफिशियरी वो होगा, फॉलोड बाय बीपीसीएल एंड आईओसी। बट ऐसा नहीं है कि इस सबके लिए अच्छा होगा। तो आई थिंक फॉर गैस कंपनीज लाइक से गुजरात गैस, बिकॉज जो एलपीजी है वो compete करता है गैस के साथ में, तो एलपीजी अगर सस्ता होगा तो गैस कंपनीज के लिए थोड़ी दिक्कत आ जाती है
Margin
टू पुश द वॉल्यूम्स। बट आवर सेंस इज दैट ओवरऑल इट इज गुड फॉर ओएमसीज। ना अपस्ट्रीम में जनरली कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, बट अगर क्रूड 75 के नीचे जाता है तो देन आई थिंक उनका रियलाइजेशन इम्पैक्ट होना चालू होगा। तो अप टिल नाउ ऐसा सिचुएशन है नहीं, बट गुड पार्ट इज दैट किसी ओवरऑल क्रूड सॉफ्ट रहता है तो हमारे लिए मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी के लिए काफी अच्छा है। तो आई थिंक crude remaining soft is a very big positive for
Yeah.
us, and ideally benefit should accrue in quarters going forward.
And crude remaining soft is very good for Indian economy as well, because our import bill is completely based on that. Like we are
Correct.
crude importing nations. So I think major news which were there have been covered here. As usual, our last segment is your hidden gem. So what is your hidden gem for this week?
So Gaurav, the hidden gem for this week is Gateway District Park. Now this company is into logistics space. यहाँ पे हमारा target price is about 125 with an upside of 16%. Now this company derives 78% of their revenues from container train operations, or nearly 80% odd. And then इनके पास में cold chain logistics है plus container freight stations हैं जहाँ पे revenues are expected to be sort of stable. Now, जो growth आने वाली है, overall our sense is going to come on the container train operation side. So there we are expecting कि जिनके rail volumes हैं वो करीब 3.3 लाख TEUs थे 23 में, जो कि बढ़ के 3.9 हो जाएंगे, एंड उसके बाद में FY25 में बढ़ के करीब 4.5 हो जाएंगे। रियलाइजेशन लार्जली स्टेबल रहेगा करीब 32,000 के आसपास में, एंड ओवरऑल एबिटा भी करीब 9,000 है एंड आगे जाके 10,000 होगा। बट जो ग्रोथ आएगी वो आई थिंक विल बी अ कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ फैक्टर्स। एक तो ये होगा कि इनका जो आईसीडीज हैं कुछ ये कमीशन कर रहे हैं, तो इनका जो एक जयपुर का आईसीडी है वो कमीशन हो जाएगा, तो इनिशियली वॉल्यूम थोड़े कम रहेंगे, बट सेकेंड हाफ तक अगले साल जाते जाते करीब 4,000 टी वहां से ऐड हो जाएगा, प्लस 2 और आईसीडीज ऐड कर रहे हैं। एक अच्छी चीज ये है कि आपके जो डेडिकेटेड फ्रेट कॉरिडोर्स हैं वो अब कमीशन होने वाले हैं, तो उसकी वजह से ये होगा कि जो आपका कंटेनर ट्रेन कंटेनर का मूवमेंट है रोड से होता था वो रेल से होगा, एंड उसका एक बेनिफिट इस कंपनी को भी मिलना चाहिए। तो ओवरऑल आर सेंसेस की इसको वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ अच्छा रहेगा। रियलाइजेशन ग्रोथ शायद होगा भी, बट हमने उसको लिया नहीं है। एंड जैसे मैंने बताया कि एबिटा पर टीयू जो है वो थोड़ा सा मार्जिनली इंप्रूव होगा, एंड इसकी वजह से जो उसका टॉप लाइन ग्रोथ है वो करीब 11% होने वाला है। एंड क्योंकि ग्रोथ अच्छी होगी तो इसका कैश फ्लो जनरेशन भी अच्छा होगा, तो ये फ्री कैश फ्लो यील्ड इसका करीब 6% निकल के आता है, एंड इसको हम करीब 25-24 का मल्टीपल असाइन करते हैं तो हमको 125 का टारगेट मिलता है। ओवरऑल लॉजिस्टिक्स स्पेस काफी टाइम से अच्छा नहीं किया बिकॉज आपके एग्जिम वॉल्यूम्स थोड़े सॉफ्ट है, तो आई थिंक इसका जो एग्जिम वॉल्यूम की जो रिकवरी होगा उसकी वजह से भी इस कंपनी को बेनिफिट मिलना चाहिए।
ओके, तो आई थिंक दिस इज आवर शुभ निवेश पिक एज वेल।
करेक्ट,
परफेक्ट। सो आज हमने जितने भी स्टॉक्स डिस्कस किए न्यूज बेस्ड सारे कवर्ड हैं, उसके ऊपर हिडन जेम भी हमने ऑलरेडी कवर किया, तो लुकिंग गुड। आई थिंक बहुत जल्दी जल्दी टारगेट्स आएंगे, प्रॉफिट बुक किया जाए, दैट्स ऑल आई कैन से। सो थैंक यू सो मच पंकज, एज यूजुअल टेकिंग टाइम फॉर अस। सी यू ऑन नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे विद सम न्यू पिक्स एंड definitely a very good hidden gem, at least 40% upside wala. One request from my side.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to never miss an update from ICICI Direct.